A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. Jesus said, I am the Good Shepherd. A good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. A hired man who is not a shepherd and whose sheep are not his own sees a wolf coming and leaves the sheep and runs away, and the wolf catches and scatters them. This is because he works for pay and has no concern for the sheep. I am the Good Shepherd, and I know mine, and mine know me. Just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father, and I will lay down my life for the sheep. I have other sheep that do not belong to this fold. These also I must lead, and they will hear my voice. And there will be one flock and one shepherd. That is why the Father loves me, because I lay down my life in order to take it up again. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down on my own. I have the power to lay it down and the power to take it up again. This command I have received from my Father. The Gospel of the Lord. So this day gives me an opportunity to speak about one of my favorite topics over the last 8 years. And one of the topic is Father Zachary Callahan. As we anticipate his visitation, celebrate his visitation here to say hello to us, and as we prayerfully and hopefully anticipate his return back to Curay for residence. Thursday, April 25th, is Father Callahan's 66th anniversary of priestly ordination. And as we celebrate World Day of Prayer for Vocations, it's also very timely that by his very presence, he encourages us always, even though he's a few miles east of here, to work for and to pray for vocations of service. Vocations of service, obviously, in the church, but service to the community, service to our nation, service to our world in different ways. Beyond vocations, it's interesting that in this year of 2024, there will be 64 nations holding national elections, including our own. More voters than ever in history will head to the polls, representing a combined population of about 49% of the human race, the results of which, for many, will prove obviously consequential, very consequential for years to come. And with every election, citizens will face the important question together, who should lead? It has a related shadow question, you might say, that gets asked little less rarely, who will follow? Who will lead us? Who will follow? And although we ask the first question quite openly, obviously during an election year, it arises as well in the more immediate circles that we inhabit. Who should lead in the family? How can we lead better in our own family environments? Who should lead in the work environment? Obviously, who should lead in our country? But also, as a church, we ask the same questions from our own membership, from all of us here, each year on Good Shepherd Sunday and on World Day of Prayer for Vocations. So among those gathered here this weekend, we can ask ourselves, who will lead the church into the future? Who will preach the gospel to the assembly that gathers tomorrow and all the other tomorrows? Who will be our teachers and prophets and healers and administrators and music makers and caregivers? If it takes a village to raise a child, it takes a small army to run a community of faith. And so we dedicate this one day of the year to pray for church leaders, those we already have, most especially today, Father Zach, and the ones that we need for the future. So if you love the church with all its warts, with all its imperfections, pray for those who lead her around the world. If you don't like the way that the church is headed, if you have disagreements with ecclesial, with church decisions and pronouncements, then all the more reason to pray twice as hard. But more than that, you might consider that your uncomfortability, your dissatisfaction may itself be a call to service, if not to leadership. The church doesn't need yes men and women. In fact, it's calling us to be a synodal church. That is a listening church where conversations lead to conversion, conversations lead to commitment, conversations lead to more active and more fully engaged participation in the mission of the church under the leadership of the Good Shepherd. We all bear responsibility for growing, for producing, for encouraging good leadership all over. We do it at home, in schools, in parishes, in our communities. People become good leaders based on their experiences of what life teaches them in good times and even in bad times. So today we're invited to look into our hearts on this Good Shepherd Sunday, to gain the wisdom of Jesus' constant invitation that teaches us to be part of his flock. Maybe you have a light that you've been tending or hiding, perhaps, under a bushel basket. Are you a leader that we've been waiting for? So that's one of the messages for today. And now, back to Zach. As a Navy man, Father Zach and so many others of the greatest generation attuned their ears to hear the call of duty for service for our country, duty of service for our church, duty of service in so many different ways. And that's the connection I'd like to make on this Good Shepherd Sunday. We're here at Mass because we've heard the call of the Good Shepherd inviting us again and again to follow him. That invitation invariably comes through human channels, very human, imperfect channels, the interventions, the invitations of others to pay attention to Jesus and his call to service wherever that might take us. It's a rare thing, if it ever happens at all, that someone wakes up some morning and independently has a thought, an idea to become a Catholic, to be baptized, or to serve in some form of leadership. No, faith is a gift. And it is a gift that comes by way of a giver. Our parents, our grandparents, so many others in our lives that have influenced us and inspired us by their witness and example. And as the saying goes, it's caught more than it's taught, or it's caught first, even before it's taught. So we use the word call or summons to describe the experience that brings us here today. People come to faith because of what they heard. The call isn't a singular event. When one enters a relationship with people, we don't get one phone call, one invitation, and never hear from that person again. Rather, that person's voice becomes a familiar voice. And the call of Jesus is the same way. It doesn't occur once in baptism and then fade away, although that can happen. Instead, we seek to hear that voice again and again, and that's why we keep coming back. We vote, not just in an election year, but every day, to listen and to follow. To listen and to follow. And that's why we're back here again, to listen to the Good Shepherd. When a relationship is real, when it is authentic, the sound, the tone of a friend's voice is something that we recognize anywhere, whether it's on the phone, you don't even have to say your name, or on the street, or shout across a crowded auditorium, or whispered in the dark hour. That's him. That's her. I mentioned before that before my mother passed away, which was 4 years ago the other day, this past Friday, I used to save all of her messages that she left on the phone, and I used to take all these videos that I would send to my family. And I started doing that years ago when the fellow priest lamented that he could no longer remember, he could no longer recall his mother's voice shortly after she died. The gospel today urges us to follow follow the voice of Jesus, the Good Shepherd, for our protection, so we might be nurtured in safe pastures. Following his voice, however, is increasingly difficult in our modern society, because every day we know there are hundreds of other voices out there calling our names, clamoring for our attention, competing for our allegiance. Even just to think of the things that people send on emails or text messages, whatever it might be. They offer various formulas for health, for wealth, for solving problems, for getting along with your coworkers, for raising children, for avoiding depression, for becoming popular, getting ahead, whatever it might be. So these contemporary, modern-day shepherds guarantee results, whether with cars or cosmetics or clothes. It's surprising how much the quality of our lives are affected by the voices we tune into from the plethora of not so good and sometimes bad shepherds out there that people choose, that we can sometimes choose to follow. But it's astonishing how much the quality of our lives can be upgraded by tuning out other voices and following the shepherd, who has our best interests at heart and can lead us into safe, nourishing, healthy pastures. So as we reflect upon today's gospel, I think it's urgent that we try to become sharply critical and very discerning of the various voices and alternate choices out there vying for our attention and our allegiance. Jesus tells us today about the hired hand. And basically he says, don't listen to the hired hand who works for pay. And in a sense he says, don't give the devil a ride in your heads. Don't give the devil a ride in your hearts. He always wants to take the wheel and drive. A priest friend of mine tells his students at Kellenberg High School, he always says, when you pray the Hail Mary, also add, Hail Mary, full of grace, punch the devil in the face. In other words, don't listen to those deceiving voices of the bad shepherds out there hurting us, trying to hurt us individually and collectively away from God and away from one another. The devil and his minions are hired hands who don't care for the sheep and who bring on the wolves to scatter us, to divide us as a church, obviously as a nation, and even within our own families. The Good Shepherd knows you and me. He pleads with us today to attune our hearts and our minds to his call. If we feel confused by conflicting messages, isn't it to our best advantage to tune out those voices and to tune into again the one who says to us very clearly today, I am the Good Shepherd.